risk Numenorian lives for some grimy Southlander and a warmongering elf?
Divisions rock Numenor. The stranger is pursued in the Southlands, and warriors prepare to take up arms on many fronts. I'm Dominic.
And I'm Anthony.
And welcome back to Deadline's Inside the Ring, the Lord of the Rings, the Rings of Power after show.
This week, the battle is almost afoot as Galadriel tries to pressure and manipulate Halbrand to take up his true royal role and help lead a Numenorian army to Middle-earth from the tightening grip of the orcs. Meanwhile, over in the Southlands, the Harfoot's migration survives an attack thanks to the stranger.
However, from the stranger's power comes chaos and fear. At the same time, a trio are looking for the stranger with a clear and dogged agenda of their own. Back on Numenor, young attraction and differing perspectives on the Queen Regent's committing ships and soldiers to Galadriel's cause prove fiery, literally and figuratively.
What do you think you're doing?
I'm not leaving her adrift.
Suppose you'll be sharing your rations with her then?
The tides of fate are flowing.
Well, if no one else will.
Yours may be heading in. Or out.
The two of you meet literally at sea.
Yes.
Pulled onto a raft. Not pulled on by you, by the way. Pulled on by others. And then there's, I would say, almost the hero moment where you step forward. And we clearly know that this relationship is going to develop into something. What was that like for you guys to bring that moment and also to begin the relationship?
It's an interesting beginning for them, I think, because in that moment, they're a means of survival to each other. I mean, certainly for Hal, he knows that he's probably not going to survive without her.
And he's a new character.
Yeah.
That's part of the introduction. So you're leaping into established lore with this character.
Yeah, exactly. I think that their dynamic, which unfolds as the show progresses, it's more for Hal. He's at a point in his life where he is moving forward. He's leaving whatever's come in his past behind, and he's saying, "I'm starting afresh."
You call him Hal, and it really does resemble a certain Shakespearean character.
Exactly.
And the transformation.
I've thought about that a few times, actually, when I call him Hal. I've been calling him Hal all the time, but then I realized, does he ever get called Hal in the show? I don't think so.
I never call him
It's just
Hal.
a little pet name
Hey,
that I have
Hal.
for him. But yeah, as it unfolds, I think what Galadriel represents for him is like a second chance almost, a new start, but inadvertently their relationship, she sort of starts to pull him back towards things in his past which he might not be willing to revisit. And she doesn't quite understand, and maybe he doesn't either, but there is kind of a real push and pull in their dynamic.
Help me.
I think I've helped you quite enough.
Then help yourself.
In this scene, they both have to face an emotional truth about themselves. And now that they have full honesty, each of them can either decide to move forward or part ways.
That was a hugely pivotal scene for those characters and where they are in the season.
I remember that day really because it was a big, we knew it had the air of a big scene, I think. And we had a whole day to do it. We were just in a room the whole day doing so many different versions of it. And we were really working it with Wayne, the director.
Yeah, he always said that was kind of the scene.
A pivotal scene.
And so there was lots of discussion about it. And we were really lucky that lots of it was like done chronologically. So by that point, we kind of knew.
I think there's just a huge amount of conflict in Hal at that moment. That he has this whole new life set up for him. But there's this person that he is connected with. And I think he knows full well that she is going to be using him. He's going to be used, but there is something within him that is drawing him back to that, and something in his, I guess, destiny that he feels like is written in the stars for him to go with her. I think he spent that whole thing grappling, but I think what he really wants from her is just some kind of truth.
Why do you keep fighting? You're asking me to go to the one place that I swore never to return. The least you can do is tell me why.
What Aaron, my cinematographer, and I wanted to do was create this sense of entrapment. The scene starts with Galadriel finding Halbrand at the end of a day in the blacksmith's, and she feels that she has the upper hand because of information that she's found out about the mark that Halbrand wears around his neck. And so when she comes in, it almost feels like she's sort of cornering him and pressuring him to join the mission to Middle-earth. But then when the tables turn and then Halbrand gets the upper hand. Then we switch round, and Halbrand feels like he's now cornering her as he presses Galadriel to find out why she wants to keep fighting. What is she really hiding? And then also through the types of coverage, we started with a wider eye line as they begin to sort of verbally spar, and as they really sort of begin to kind of pierce each other's sort of emotional armor, they're almost staring directly into the lens, almost kind of staring directly into each other's souls.
Hey. Nori is personally threatened by the stranger's power, and there's a scene where her hand is frozen and she's thrown off. Talk about that.
Up until this point, Nori really has been the one that is trying to convince everyone that the stranger is actually here for good, that their fears are unnecessary, and also by the time we see them in this scene, the stranger has traveled with them. He's almost like a surrogate family member, as they've done part of their migration, which could have been possibly a couple of weeks. So we get to see at the beginning of the episode, we're really going to get to see them bond as this family. And so by the time we meet the stranger in this scene, he's saved Nori and Poppy and Malva from a wolf attack. And so Nori thinks that that's, the final proof that she has that he was good. But then when their hands come into contact and she finds that she's frozen to him, more worryingly, she realizes that he is in some sort of trance and seems to be oblivious to her calls for help and for him to stop. And then something that kind of mirrors their first interaction in the crater in episode 1, we see flashes of light and chaos as she's then propelled through the air and suddenly realizes that, maybe she was wrong about the stranger.
Who are these 3 mysterious creatures overlooking the crater where the stranger landed? And why looking for him?
Well, if I told you, then we would ruin the fun. But what I don't want to give too much away. But what I would say is, they are looking for the stranger. Although we don't know very much about the stranger, I can assure you that they do. They're not going to stop until they locate him. And we know, of course, that the stranger has just been invited into the Harfoot tribe, and they're now migrating together. So we know for sure that our dear Harfoots are likely in mortal peril.
Isn't a name in the city he doesn't know. A crowd he can't turn, a favour he isn't owed.
It's impressive.
I was going to say infuriating.
Let's talk about your character's budding romance. Where's it going to go?
I feel I should say at the outset that within 10 minutes of first meeting Emma, she said, "I don't think my character's into you." So I'm really curious to see how it plays on screen.
It didn't make sense to me. When I first read it, I was like, why would she's so ambitious, why would she be interested in a rich boy?
Audiences will have questions, especially after that first episode. Because why are they meeting now? Is it just a coincidence, or are they trying to get something out of each other? Certainly, I don't think this meet cute is an accident. I think he's finding his way to you. But I think once they start talking, he starts to realize that she's pretty special.
I think at first for me, it's I have a growing respect for your father, and I'm very aware that you're his son.
Well, I think we've got strong questions about your family. I think you're well known to be elf sympathizers. We know about the mother, we know that the brother went missing. We have now this new information that he's been appointed as the kind of like point person for Galadriel, which is like, what's that about? So I think that's a big part of the reason why we're getting closer to this family. And it turns out we've got way more in common than I saw coming.
Yeah, we're both overlooked by our dads.
Yeah.
A little bit.
I definitely got a sense watching some of your scenes that you have 2 squeaky wheels for brothers and you're not getting a lot of grease. That you're constantly looking for like,
a way to be appreciated, a way to, yeah.
Earien is a progressive character. She's supportive of her brother, wants to be an apprentice, and wants to make a name for herself in a field dominated by men. Tell us more.
I like that she has sort of selfish ambitions and she's not sort of careful if she's likable or not. I think that's cool. But like all she really cares about is her brother, preventing him from doing the same thing as her other brother, running away. I think her ambition is also closely like married with her absolute love of her island. She's painfully aware of the greatness that her people have created.
So why is she so opposed to the Queen Regent's support to go and fight in the Southlands?
Well, because it affects her. It affects her viscerally. It's like her brother is going to go fight. You know, she's already lost her mom. She's already lost her middle brother. If Isildur dies over there, it seems very silly. She's not really politically minded until it starts affecting her family. It's very much sort of this ideology took my brother away, and in some sense my mother. Therefore, it's not what I'm going to align myself with. You know?
Soon we will save the low men of Middle-earth, lift them up, and give them the king they've long awaited. A king who will be forever in our debt. Now contemplate, if you can, how that might benefit us.
As Chancellor and cousin, Pharazon is obviously very loyal to the Queen Regent, but he clearly has his own agenda and his own ideas about the way things should go, some of which he shares with his son. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, I think with Pharazon, his loyalty is to Numenor. He has a very deep love for his people. And when you see that also as well, he's an economist as well. So, he's on about resources. I mean, I get a lot of, Pharazon is, very tribal and, I get lots of sort of Brexit references. He wants to break away from Middle-earth. He doesn't. I think Pharazon is a globalist. I think, like anybody from whichever land, he just wants it on his terms. That doesn't make him a bad man. That probably makes him a very good Numenorian, I guess, dare I say it.
You all but single-handedly prevented our last king from dragging us back to the old ways. Don't tell me you couldn't sway Miriel's mind now.
What makes you think Miriel's mind and my own are not as one in this?
Because my father would sooner die than take orders from an elf.
Why does Kemen persuade his father to oppose the mission and then ultimately tries to burn the boats?
It's a really interesting turn. I mean, in episode 4, you can see that their relationship is, tough in a lot of ways, but in Kemen's mind, Pharazon is always right. It may not be like an easy relationship, but he has massive respect for his father. And then when he starts putting everything in place to follow Miriel's plans, he's thrown by it. It goes against everything they stand for, everything they believe in. And it seems like he's just waiting for his dad to turn this thing around, and it's not happening. I don't think he's sleeping a lot that week. I think he's waiting for sense to come to the fore, and it doesn't happen. And I think because of this push from Earien, he finally challenges him in a way that he never has before. I think it's a massive moment for his growth. I think he's, as I say, he's only known comfort, and he's not really challenged status quo before because it's served him so well. And I think when Pharazon does get challenged by him, maybe for the first time he's not just seen his son blindly follow, there is, a kernel of respect there. But I don't think, as much as it makes sense that the spoils could be worth it, this is not the politics that Kemen was expecting. I think his idea of this is still pretty pure. I grew up in Wellington. I grew up around, youth wing politicians associated with the parties in our government. And I saw a lot of people who had a lot of passion and not a lot of experience. And I think Kemen has been in that boat. He's got really clear ideas about what Numenor stands for. The reality of what Pharazon is interested in doing in furthering Numenor, I think that's, while understandable, shocking in a certain way. And I think that's part of what encourages him to go down a really dangerous path and makes this wild call a plan that is, in my mind, half-baked. And personally, I don't know if it happens unless Isildur is there. I feel like he's mapped out all the steps, and unless there's somebody there who he has a scuffle with, I'm not convinced he doesn't just sit there until the sun comes up trying to will himself to set this thing on fire. I think the fact that he runs into this person throws all of it into motion. And the fact that there are limited consequences, I think, is a really dangerous lesson.
What happened? He was in a fishing boat. He saved my life. He could have just left, but he saved my life.
Will Isildur saving him and not reporting his betrayal affect his stance?
I mean, Kemen owes him big time, but to a certain extent, I think Kemen's baffled by this move. I think if the shoe was on the other foot, there's no universe in which Kemen doesn't dob him in to score points with his father. I think he's, in this moment, looking at him absolutely bewildered by his processing. Kemen is selfish. Kemen is somebody who's thinking about how can I get ahead. Or it seems like Isildur, even in this moment where he could absolutely trade off this thing, is trying to work out how to do right by people who really don't deserve it, in my personal opinion. I guess your brother's not an arc.
Yeah, just kidding.
It's just not an arc.
It's not an arc.
There's a scene where you're putting everyone
With the
in
cadets.
Yeah, that was incredible. When they told me I was doing a two-handed sword fight, I was like, good luck. But I had never been able to like even write one letter with my left hand. How is this possible? The stunties were incredible. And yeah, that was so much fun. We kind of split it into 2 acts, but lots of it was kind of just one take.
It was amazing. I got to watch it because I just stand there and watch.
No, you do a nice little kick.
There's a
my
nice little
friend.
thing
Yeah,
at the
got a little
end.
kick at the
Yeah,
end.
that was the last bit of filming. But I got to watch, like, you know, we had amazing stunt teams, but you did the whole thing yourself. I mean, it was amazing.
It was always going to be a source of joy to get to watch Galadriel and some of her sword play. I mean, I think the last time we saw her wielding a sword was episode 1. And so there was an opportunity arose to create a stunt scene showing us her sword play. As complicated as it looks, it was incredibly easy and a pleasure to shoot because Morfydd and the actors, they put so much time in the stunt rehearsal that there were no stunt doubles. It was all them. As from a director and a cinematographer's perspective, it immediately makes it easier and also more creative because you don't need to hide doubles' faces and cuts. You can, you know, the camera can flow with the movement of the choreography. So it was actually a very, very simple scene to shoot. I think we did it in a day.
The sun is fast falling beneath trees of stone. The light in the tower, no longer my home.
For me, the music of The Lord of the Rings is connected to the world of Middle-earth. I can't think about it without hearing music in my head. Some of that music is written by Howard Shore for the films and some of the other composers that have contributed music to it over the decades. Some of that music is in the book itself. You know, characters just break out into song, and there's characters playing instruments that are written into the world itself, this musical heritage. So as a young adult reading the books, I'm hearing music. I can't take music out of my experience of Lord of the Rings. So then, as a professional then, being given the opportunity to write music for The Lord of the Rings, The Rings of Power, I feel like I've already been working on it in the background of my brain for my entire life. So it was inevitable that I would pay an homage to the musical legacy of The Lord of the Rings, but almost equally inevitable that that would go through the filter of my own musical voice.
That's it for today's Deadlines Inside the Ring. Thanks for joining us.
And join us again next week for more of the inside scoop on Prime Video's The Lord of the Rings, The Rings of Power.
Whoa, oh my God. I see the
See you later.
We have to try everything right.
Drink.
I'll be keeping this for later.
I don't care about the show. I just want a good blooper reel.
I want to learn science.
You guys are going to make me look like I'm in the show, right? You're going to put in the effects. Replace the green. I don't want to look like an asshole here.
Sorry.